Welcome back to our research YouTube channel. Today's class we learn how to make this beautiful play suit. You can also call it a romper. It's a shirt romper. So it has this beautiful standard collar, the shirt button placket, and then it has a pocket on the side as well, and it has this beautiful turn up on the hem of the shirt. It's a very beautiful tutorial and it's very simple to make. If this is something you like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to be drafting the upper bodice on my pattern. You can also draft directly on fabric. I'm using a paper so that we can see what I'm doing clearly. So I have my armhole line. My armhole line is 9 inches, and then my waistline to be 17 inches including allowance. So I have it like this. So the next thing is to draft my shoulder. 16 inches divided by 2 is 8 inches, so I have 8 inches here, and there I'm going to go down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. So for my neckline, I'm working with a neck width of 3 inches and 3 inches for the back, and 3 inches and 1 inch for the front. So I'm going to connect all of that together. So I'm using this paper for both front and back. So for my front, this is a shirt, so I'm not going to have any seam at the back. If you want to have a seam at your back, you can make it that way, but for me, I'm not adding any seam at the back. So my only opening is going to be in front, so I'll just adjust accordingly when I'm cutting on my fabric. So now here I'm going to take my bust measurement. My bust is 44 divided by 4 is 11, but I don't want it to be really free, so I'm going to be adding like half an inch for ease, and then have 11 and a half. So on my waistline, my waist is 38 divided by 4 is 9 and a half, so I'm adding half an inch for ease as well, and then I have 10 inches there. So after that, I'm going to add 1 inch for my dart, and then I'll connect that together. So you can connect and add your allowance on your pattern, or you can add it later. So I'm just going to add 1 inch allowance for my seam allowance. So this is for a big size, and then I'm connecting it like that. So I'm going to use my cuff to connect my armhole line as well, and then I'll cut this and then remove to the lower part. So you can actually have it as a single piece, but I prefer to just have it separately because I want to have a side pocket with this. So cutting my front, my upper part and lower part separately is going to make that easy for me. So I'll cut it out, and for the dart I'm going to measure my bust point, which is 11 inches. So I'm going to go down by half an inch on that point, and then my bust point is 9 inches, so that's 4.5 inches, and then I'll connect that to make a straight line. Then from there I'm going to go by half an inch on both sides. Remember, I added 1 inch for my dart, and I'll connect that. So I'll set this aside now and work on the lower part. Okay, so for the short, I have a fresh paper down now. So what I'm going to do first is to measure 1 inch allowance on this side, and then I'm going to connect it to form a straight line. So I've done that. So the next thing, now this upper part is going to double as my waistline. So I'm going to take my waist measurement, the same measurement I took on the upper part. So my waist is 38 divided by 4 was 9.5 inches. Then I had 10 inch for ease, and then I'm going to mark that there, and then I'm going to mark another 1 inch for my dart and 1 inch for my allowance. So altogether I will have 12 inches. So now from that upper part, I'm going to measure my crotch length. So now this crotch length is different from the regular one for your trouser, because this is a jumpsuit, and then you know your waistline is now higher than your regular trouser. So you can just measure from your actual waistline, or you can just add 3 to 4 inches to your actual crotch. My actual crotch was 11 inches, so because this is a jumpsuit, I'm going to be adding extra 1 2 3 inches to that, and that's going to leave me with 14 inches. So if you are tall, you can add up to 4 inches or 5 inches. So I have it there, and then I'm going to make that into a straight line as well. So the 12 inches that I marked on the upper part, I'm going to repeat it on my crotch line as well, and then I'll make it into a straight line as well. So I'm just checking to make sure that my 12 inches here. Okay, remember we got the 12 inches from my actual waist measurement, which was 10, plus 1 inch for that allowance and 1 inch for seam allowance. So that is what I have. So for my dart, I'm going to measure 4.5 inches from the center part there, and then for my dart leg, I want it to be around 5 inches long. So I'll connect that and then take 1/2 inch on both sides. I'm just eyeballing this, so measure yours when you're drafting yours. So that's my dart over there. So here on my crotch now, I'm going to take my thigh measurement, my round thigh measurement. That is the fullest part of your thigh. So for me, that is 31 inches. 31 inches divided by 2 is 15.5. So now this time around, you're going to be taking the measurements from outside your 1 inch allowance. Remember, we took our waist measurement from here. So here now for the crotch, I'm taking it from here. So I'm measuring the 15.5 inches from here, and it stops there. So I'm going to add extra 1 inch allowance to that as well, and then I'm going to extend my line to get to that point. So it stops here now. So to draw my crotch curve, I'll measure what I have, and I have around 3.5 inches. So this 3.5 inches, I'm going to divide it into 4, and then after dividing, I just folded my tape into 4. So I have it here. So that's what's going to guide me on the extension that I'm going to draw here to draw my crotch curve. So after having that, now the next thing is to bring in my curve ruler and then draw my crotch curve. So if you can take it at once, you can draw at once, but if not, you just take it in bits. So I'm connecting like this first, and then I'm going to take my ruler now and then connect to the lower part. So this is what I have. So the next thing is for me to shape the side of the trouser. So to shape it, I'm going to extend this outwards. Remember, I started taking my crotch measurements on the outer part, so I'm connecting that outwards. So in the case of the waistline, we started connecting from where this allowance stops. So now I'm going to use a curved ruler to connect all of them together to give me my hip curve. Okay, remember our hip line is not straight, so I have connected that now, and this is what I have. So the next thing is to measure the length of this short. So it's going to be a little bit short. So from my crotch, I'm just going to measure around 6 inches as my total length. You can take that measurement on your body as well, and then I'm just going to connect that. So for the round measurement of where your short is going to stop, you can measure that on your body, but I just want it to be a straight band, so I'm just going to curve it a bit here. So this is what I have. So this is my trouser pattern for my short pattern for the jumpsuit. So now this jumpsuit has a turn up on the lower part. So for the turn up, I'm going to add 1/2 inch allowance to my actual trouser measurement, because I'm going to cut out the turn up and then re-sew it back. So to sew it back, I need that 1/2 inch on the trouser pattern, and then I'm going to connect it. Okay, so now we are going to create the turn up. So for the turn up now, to join it back to the trouser as well, I'm going to need 1/2 inch for that. So I'm connecting that 1/2 inch again. Okay, 1/2 inch for the main trouser and then 1/2 inch for the turn up. So that's what we have. The first 1/2 inch is for the trouser, the second 1/2 inch for the turn up. So for our turn up, I'm going to measure 2 inches for the actual turn up, and then I'm going to connect that. Okay, so that is how you create the allowance for your turn up. So now I'm going to connect the allowance for my main bodies alone. So for the turn up, I'm going to, and then remember, it's going to extend to this outer part as well. Okay, because we are not shaping this side, or else we want us to shape it. So if you want us to shape it, it means you are going to take the measurements of where this stops, and then that's going to guide us in shaping it. But I just want mine to be straight down, so that's why I'm leaving it as it is. So now to cut out my turn up, I'll fold in the allowance first. So I'm just going to reduce this paper. Okay, so you can see that the paper is reduced. So what I was explaining now, to cut it out, I'm going to fold in the turn up allowance and the turn up, okay, before I shape it on the side, so that by the time I want to add it back, I'm not going to have any shortage. Now I'm going to cut out my crotch curve and then my front is ready. I'm going to shape the side as well. Remember, we created a little shaping at the side here, so I'm going to cut that out and then use this to cut my back pattern first before I create my pocket. So bringing out this allowance now, you can see that is a bit extending. So if I connect it straight, this is what I'm going to have. So it's just going to come straight down like this, and I'll have all of this shortage. That's why it's important for you to fold it in before you cut it out. So for the back, I've placed my front pattern on it, and then you make sure that you have up to 1 inch allowance on the upper part here, and then up to 3 inches of allowance on this side, on the inner part. So the only difference we are going to be having is that I'll extend my crotch line here by 3 inches. Okay, so you can do 3.5 if the person is very big. So I'm extending mine by 3 inches as we have seen. And then the crotch cuff line here, I'm going to extend it by 1.5 inches. So now from where the front stops, I'm going to mark extra 1.5 inches, and then I have it here. So on this upper part, I'm going to go up by 1 inch for my bum rise. So now from here, I'm going to go up by 1 inch again, and then I'm going to connect all of these new 3 lines together from here to this place back to my new crotch line. So I'm going to be taking it in bits because my craft cannot take it all at once. So I've connected to the bum rise to this part, and then from there you look for a curve that can connect this as well. So you can see how I placed my curve, and then I'm connecting like this. Okay, so this is going to be my back. So now the next thing is for me to connect from here to my side. So I'm not going to let it get to my turn up area. So you can see where I stopped, and then I'm connecting it to meet the side like this. So this is what the back pattern looks like. So the side remains the same. All you just need to connect is now from your new bum rise to your side seam here, and then the back pattern is also ready. So now I'm going to cut this out as well. So I've cut this out. Now you can see that the side remains the same, and then here we have our bum rest for the back, we have our crotch cuff extension, and then our new crotch line for the back. So the turn up remains the same. So what I'm going to do is to transfer my turn up to the back as well using my tracing wheel. So I'm just going to break it from where, remember, this first allowance is for the trouser, and then the second allowance is to sew the turn up back to the trouser as well. So I'm just going to break it on that second 1/2 inch, so that I will know that this is where my turn up stops for the back as well. So now I'll go and cut this on my fabric. So I've gone ahead to cut my pattern on fabric. This is the back for the upper part. I cut the back first before cutting the front, and as you can see, the back is cut on fold. There's no seam at the center back. So now this is the front. I added my seam allowance at the front because it's opened, and that's where the button placket is going to be. So this is the front as well. And then for the shorts, this is my back. You can see I added allowance on the upper part for joining it. I already added the allowance for joining on my upper part, so I did not add it on the paper. So here as well, I added allowance for joining. So this is the back, and this is the front of the short. Okay, I added necessary allowance. So now we're going to be working on the front of the short because it has a pocket. So the first thing I'm going to do here on this center part, I'm going to drop it by 1/2 inch. I just like the fitting that it gives, so you can drop it by 1/2 inch, 0.75 or 1 inch. So after dropping it like that, I'm going to connect it back to the side. So it is connected back. Now we're going to cut that off. So the next thing is to create our pocket. So for the pocket on this waistline, I'm going to go inwards by 3 inches. Remember, we already have 1 inch allowance for sewing, so it's just like taking 2 inches. So if you want to take 2.5, you just go in by 3.5 inches. So now for the pocket opening, I'm going to go down by 7 inches, and then using my ruler, I'm going to connect this together. Okay, so it can be slant straight like this, or you can cuff it a bit. So now we're going to be cutting this off for our pocket. But before I cut it off, I want to shape the side of my pocket first. So for my pocket, I have a measurement of 17 inches by around 11 inches, depending on how big you want your pocket to be. So this is for the 2 pockets, and I just place them on each other, right side facing right side. So on one side, okay, of the pocket, so this is going to be the side of the pocket. So on one side of the pocket like this, I'm going to place my side seam, and then I'm going to shape out my side. So I'm placing it on it like this, and then I'm cutting out the shape of the side on just one side. So now after shaping it, I can now bring it out and cut out my exact pocket shape. So to cut out my exact pocket shape, remember we've shaped one side of the pocket, so on the other side I'm going to bring in the other side which is not shaped. I've shaped that side, so this other side I'm going to place it on my pocket, and then I'm going to shape it together with the pocket. Okay, so you can see how I'm placing it, and then I'm going to cut this out. So your pocket can be longer than this. I don't have enough fabric, that's why I just left it at 11 inches length. Okay, so now I have shaped one side of the pocket, and then the other side was shaped just like my waist. So this is what it's going to look like, and then your hand is just going to go through like this. So to start to sew now, I've removed my pin, and I'm going to take my pattern out. So before I do that, remember I said I'll cut out the turn up separately from the main fabric. So now I'm going to place my pattern back and then cut out my turn up for both the front and back. It's very important because this fabric has a true right and wrong side. I don't want to do my turn up and then the wrong side is going to be showing on the main fabric. So now after pinning it down again, I'm cutting out this turn up. So I've cut it out now, and then I'm going to label it turn up, and then I'm going to indicate the side that is towards the center area, just something to remind you. Then I'll keep it aside. So now I'll start by sewing the pocket first. Okay, I have a detailed tutorial on how to fix a pocket already, so I'm just going to rush through this. So I'll separate the 2 sides now, and then I'm going to sew the pocket. Okay, so the easy way of sewing a pocket is just by arranging it like this. So this is the right side. You want the right side to be facing up by the time you finish sewing it. So just place it like that, and then you place your trouser pattern on it. So once you place it on it, you can see that the right side is facing the right side. So the next thing is for you to sew them together. So you just flip it now, and then sew right side facing right side first before you lock it. So like I said, I have a detailed tutorial on how to fix a pocket, so I'm going to link it down. So I've pinned it down as if I've sewn it. So after sewing it, you just flip it like this and then arrange it well. So I'm just showing what I'm going to do on the sewing machine. So after arranging it well, you flip it and then close it on the lower part, and that is it. Okay, so that is how you fix your pocket. So now I'll go and fix the pocket and bring it back to show us. So I have gone to fix the pocket for the 2 sides, and you can see what it looks like. This is my pocket, and this is the wrong side. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do now is to hold my dart, and then I'm going to sew the front part, the upper part, sorry. I'm going to hold my dart and then sew the upper part to the lower part. So now this is the center front of the upper part as well, so they have to be on the same level. So now I'll hold the dart and then sew both of them together for both the front and back, so you don't have to get confused. This is the dart for the upper part, and then I'm going to hold the dart for the lower part as well, and then I'm going to join them on the waistline. So I'll do this for the front as well as the back. So to do this, the first thing you need to do is to join your crotch. So how do you join your crotch? Okay, so to sew your crotch, you just place them on each other, right side facing right side, the 2 front as well as the 2 back, and then you sew it together on the crotch. So once you sew it together on the crotch, you will have a full bodice, especially for the back that does not have a seam. So you'll be able to join the front and back together. But for the front that is separate, you can afford to just sew them separately. But in the case of the back, this front, the upper back does not have an opening, so you have to join your crotch together first, so that you have a full shot on your back, so that you can join them together on the waistline. Okay, so I've gone ahead to hold my dart. As you can see, the dart for the upper part and the lower part. This is the front, and then I sew my crotch on the front area up to around 25 inches or so from the shoulder area. Okay, so I stopped around 25 inches. You measure from your shoulder. This is because I'm going to be adding a button, so I have around 24.5 inches. So from the shoulder now, I measured around 24.5 inches downwards, depending on where you want it to stop, but it has to be a bit low so that it can be easy for the person to wear it. Remember, this is a jumpsuit. So now I sewed up, I stopped, from the 24.5 inches, I sewed down my crotch. You can see that the crotch is completely sewn to the lower part. So I have this part opened. Now I'm going to place a button placket here so that I can place my button and my button hole. And then for the back as well, I have gone to sew my back. So this is the back, and for the back as well, I have sewn in the dart for both front and upper part and lower part, and then I just joined it. So you can see that the crotch for the back is sewn completely because there is no opening at the center back. Okay, the side back is sewn completely. So now for my placket, I'm gonna ahead to measure what I have on this upper part. So you measure from one neckline to the other. So now you place your tape now from the neckline, and then you measure from this neckline, and then you turn it and measure to the other neckline. So I have about 45 inches after measuring. So I just cut out a fabric of 50 inches so that I'm not going to have any shortage. It's better for it to be more than for it to be less. So now I cut a fabric of 50 inches long, and then the width is 5 inches. So now after cutting it, I placed my interfacing on it and iron it. So now what I did was to fold in half an inch on one side, and then I started folding it by 1 inch again. So I folded in half an inch on this side, I folded another one here. So now I folded this again and iron. So what I'm just trying to do is to make this part as thick as possible, as well as close it completely, so that by the time I sew it close, I'm not going to be seeing any rough edge. So I just folded in half here, folded in half here as well, then I folded this and folded this on top of it. So now I have something really thick that can carry my buttonhole, and then it's completely closed. So now the next thing is for me to sew this to my opening on the front part. So the way I'm going to sew it, I'm going to turn it to the wrong side first, then I will place this half an inch fold. The half an inch fold, I'm going to place it here, and then I will sew on the wrong side. So now you're going to sew it straight. Okay, you're going to sew it straight from the one neckline to the other. So after sewing it, I'm going to flip it. So I'll do this step by step, and I also have a detailed tutorial on how to fix a placket on the channel, so you may want to check that out. So I'll go ahead now and place this on my wrong side. This is the wrong side of my fabric, and then I'll place this half an inch and then sew it all around. Okay, so I've gone ahead to sew it, as you can see. So when you get to this intersection point, you just open it up like this so that you can sew it easily. And when you're sewing it, you stretch it as much as possible because you don't want any of your fabric to be under the seam. So now I have sewn it straight, and this is what it looks like. So the next thing now is for me to flip it to the right side. So it's because I've ironed it, and then the sewing, I just sew on my crease line. That's why it's important for you to iron. It's just going to guide you when you're sewing. So now because I've ironed this now, I'm just going to close it up now and flip in the seam allowance, as you can see now, and then I'm going to flip this on it and then sew. Okay, so after flipping it on it, I'm going to sew it straight just like I sew the first one as well. So I'll go and sew this also and bring it back to show us. Okay, so you may need to pin it down first. You can see that I've pinned mine down so that it can make this easier for you. And when you get to this crotch area as well, you try to open it up as much as possible so that, excuse me, it's not going to be packing. So now I'll go ahead and sew this down. I have a detailed tutorial on plackets already. This video is already too long, so I don't want this to be too long. Okay, so I've gone ahead to sew it down. As you can see how neat it is looking, so you have to sew it very neat. So the excess that I have on this upper part, remember we cut it out in excess, I'm just going to cut it off. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to fold this on the wrong side. Remember, this is the wrong side. You can see our rough edges. So now where it intersects with your crotch, you can see that seam line there. I'm going to fold this into two, and then I'm going to iron it flat. Okay, so you fold it into two on the wrong side like this and iron it flat. So for it to open up without packing anything, the seam that I have here, I'm just going to notch it, that intersection point where it joins with my body, with my crotch. I'm going to notch it. So you need a very sharp scissors for this. You can actually notch before you sew. It makes it easy. So I've notched it open now, and then I've ironed it flat, so you can see that it's lying flat. This is the placket and this is the rest of my crotch. So the last thing to do now is to flip it over to the right side like this, and you can see that it is laying on top of each other neatly. And then on this crotch area where it meets, you can see that there is nothing packing there, so it has to be this smooth. Okay, you don't want anything to be packing. See what I have here is very smooth. So now I'm going to lay it down. This is going to be my button, and this place is where my button hole will be created. So now the next thing to do is to lock my stitch here, and then I'm going to sew it up. Remember, my bodice now is now resting on the placket, so I'm going to lock it here on the lower part and then sew it up. So now after doing that, I'm going to bring in my back, and then I'll lay it on the front, and I'm going to sew it on the shoulder as well as the side seam before I measure around my neckline for my collar. So I've joined the shoulder as well as the side seam. You can see what it looks like, and then I've top stitched on this upper part. So this is what the jumpsuit looks like so far. This is the front and this is the back. So you sew it together on the underarm area. I forgot to mention that. You join the underarm together, and then you join the sides and the shoulder. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to work on my turn up. So for the turn up, you see that we cut it out separately from the pattern. This is the front and this is the back. So normally you're supposed to lay the front and back against each other, but because I use the same measurement for it, so it's going to work. So now I'm just going to close it with my seam allowance. Remember, I indicated an arrow to show that this part is the inseam area. Okay, so now on the inseam, I'm going to sew it by 1/2 inch, and then on the outer seam here, I'm going to sew it by the allowance that I left, right side facing right side. So for the two of them, I'll go ahead and sew it, and then this allowance, this 1/2 inch allowance that I left to sew it back to the bodice, I already notched the upper part to indicate it as the part where I'm going to sew to the trouser, because it's very similar, so you have to be careful. So on this side now, I'm going to sew it by 1 inch, and then here I'll sew it by 1/2 inch. So if you bring it to your trouser now, you will see that it's going to match up. Okay, let me just use the one that has label. So this is the inner part of the jumpsuit, so you can see. So now I'm going to sew this by 1 inch. You can see that the 1 inch is there, and then for the inner part, I'm going to sew it by 1/2 inch. So I'll go and sew this now and bring it back to show us how to create the turn up. So I'm going ahead to sew it. I sew by 1/2 inch on the inner seam and 1 inch on the outer seam, so you can reduce your seam allowance. Then I'm going to bring in my trouser. So after bringing your pants, you are going to turn it to the wrong side. So this is the wrong side of my pants. Now I'm going to look for the upper part. That's where I'm going to sew to my trouser, where I added my 1/2 inch allowance. And then I'm going to look for the outer seam. So this is the outer seam. You can see that they both have 1 inch seam allowance, so I'll match it. So before you do this, you must have serged all this place to make sure that they are all neat. Then you're going to match your outer seam together and pin. Okay, and then you go to the other side and then match the inner seam. So you can see the way I'm placing it. This is the wrong side of my trouser on the right side of my turn up, so that by the time I flip it, I'm going to have the right side on the right side of my bodice. So now this is the one with 1/2 inch. You can see that they both have 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to pin it as well. So you make sure you match the notches together. That's the seam line. So after pinning it round, you can see that they are equal, they have to fit each other. So now I'm going to go ahead and sew it all round. Okay, Okay, so I've gone to run my stitch, and you can see that I have sewn everything all around. So after sewing it, now the next thing is to flip my turn up to the right side of the bodice. Okay, so you can see that now that the right side now is facing the right side of my bodice. And then the last thing to do for the turn up is just to fold it here by 1/2 inch, and then you place it on the side seam. Okay, so this is the side seam, and then on this seam here I'm going to sew it, because you don't want to have seam line on your turn up. So you can also use your hemming glue to just fold the 1/2 inch inward first, then you glue it down before you now flip this. And then after flipping it on top of it like this, you're going to stitch it down to hold it. Then you come to the inner corner as well, you fold in your allowance, 1/2 inch allowance, then you flip it on it and then sew it down. So before you do that, you should have used your hemming gum to glue down this 1/2 inch all around, so that it's not going to be coming up like this, so that by the time you iron it, it's going to stay in place. So let me just lay it down so that will show us what it's going to look like. So I flipped it upwards like this. So after flipping it upward, I'm going to fold in 1/2 inch. Okay, so you can see the turn up that we have there. Then I'm going to lock it on both sides on the same allowance part. So I'm going to lock it here and here. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to measure around my neckline so that I can cut my standard collar. So it's a standard collar, and I have a detailed tutorial on it already on the channel, so you can go and watch that. I'm going to fix my collar and then bring it back to show us what we have. Okay, so I have fixed my collar. As you can see, there is a detailed tutorial on how you can draft your and sew your standard collar already on the channel. So this is the back. So what you just need to do is to create your buttonholes and then place your button on the placket that you have here. And then on the lower part, I've gone ahead to create my turn up as well. So I've ironed it down. I used my hemming glue to gum down 1/2 inch before turning it over. So this is what the full view of the playsuit looks like. So this is the lower part. So here you can just tack it with needle and thread, because you don't want to run any seam here. So it's better for it to just be like this. So this is the lower part, you can see, and this is the upper part. This is what the back looks like. So now you can fix whatever sleeve you want. I have a detailed tutorial on how you can fix a puff sleeve with cuff on the channel as well, but I think I'm just going to fix a basic sleeve to this, then I'll take it to the mannequin so that we can see what it looks like. So we're on the mannequin now, and this is what the full view of the playsuit looks like. Okay, so this is our shirt collar. It's very simple to make. Like I said, the tutorial is on the channel. This is our placket. So you open your buttonhole here and fix your button on the other side. I just held mine. This is the waistline. So just make sure that whatever you do, everything aligns. So you can see my waistline seam aligns. Also the darts, make sure that they are on the same line. So this is the pocket, the side pockets that we created on both sides, and you can see that there is nothing packing here where your placket joined to your crotch. So you have to be mindful of that place as well. This is my crotch, and this is the beautiful turn up that we created. So it's a very beautiful tutorial, as you have seen, and it's easy to make. You just need to create the sleeve of your choice and then fix on your armhole. I hope you enjoyed making this tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.